Uh, Here today to talk about birds. Placing birds and really it's kind of, I think, general hunt test stuff, but really from a perspective of how do birds each influence each other, how do marks influence blinds, what do you think about in setting up in terms of terrain, cover, wind, all of the factors that influence marking and so on. And so we have with us our two presenters, Elle and Bruhin from Tennessee and Matt Griffiths from Kentucky, who's originally from Michigan. We are going to basically talk a little bit this morning, probably make you pick your brains a little bit. Yes, you are going to have to engage. And then we'll run some setups. We're going to run 3 setups over the course of the next day and a half. Water, and land. And then we'll run dogs on the setups and see how the factors influence them and talk and just keep talking about stuff. And so hopefully we really like you all to ask a lot of questions about things. Why did you put the birds here? How does this mark influence that mark? Why did you shoot the left to right instead of right to left? Whatever. Those kind of questions. Hopefully this will be real casual and interactive. So, do you want them to introduce themselves?
Absolutely.
So,
I won't remember 90% of it. Right.
But okay, Jen, start down there and maybe just what kind of breed you have and who you are.
Jen Deaver, flat coat that's working on senior, and a lab that I washed out because she sticks on birds. But I love her too. So, thanks for coming.
I'm Glenn. I live with her.
Is that a bad thing?
I have labs.
And one flat coat that's claimed him.
Right. But I'm running around the senior level with her, so just like to have fun.
I'm Rick Ross. I have Chesapeake's. I'm running a dog right now who's got 1 senior pass, and he's a wild man. And a new grand champion as of last year.
Yeah,
So our goal is a grand champion master hunter, so I'm hoping he'll get the eventually. So.
Oh, we go back. Peg.
Yeah, I was gonna say back.
My name's Peg. I have golden retrievers. The one I'm working right now is just getting into senior. That's it. This is the one in the working dog.
Yeah, right there.
My name's Susan. I have a golden and I am working on senior. This is my first golden, first hunting dog. So it's kind of fun. I do more obedience and agility. It all works together.
I'm Judy. I have Labradors. I have a retired master hunter and a senior dog running and a companion dog who just loves me.
We love Josh. And we
Josh. Everybody loves Josh.
Josh is just Josh.
Craig?
I'm Craig Kramer. I have field trial or field bred Labradors from master hunter to puppy stage. So.
I'm Heidi Hebert. I've got flat-coated retrievers, and I've got a young pup, and then I've got another one in between. She's a senior dog, basically, and just likes to run pheasants. That's her. And I like it too. So we haven't done much since these pheasants.
I'm Pam. I have Goldens. My dog has a senior title. Maybe she could do master if we get entered in the 2 minutes that you're allowed. She does obedience agility.
I'm Heidi Shoak. I've got Labradors. I do have a retired master hunter lab, and then I'm working on my second master dog. He's got 2 passes. Also AKC judge that judges master, junior, senior. So excited to see just different perspectives. I like to learn from those that have been in it for a while You guys have done, amateur, national, and all that, and have been training a lot of dogs yourself. So just excited to see your perspectives and hear what you guys have to say.
The old folks. I'm Allison Weber. I also have showbred Labradors, 2 working on their master. They each have 1 pass. I also judge, but just pointed in junior and senior. So I'm also here mostly to learn from some very experienced people.
Not old.
Not old. So thank you for coming.
Chris Schramm, I have a Siberian away. I have Goldens, and one master hunter on a Golden, 1 senior hunter, and I'm the second master hunter, I guess now. Working on, I forget he's a master hunter, but he is.
Justine Embach. I also have showbred Labradors, a whole bunch of junior dogs, and 1 that has made it all the way through master despite me. So looking to learn. At Swallows, I have golden retrievers. I have 4 young dogs that are trying to get to senior.
Again, I'm Alan Bruhin, and I've been playing this game for over 30 years now. And trained labs, trained 3 or 4 to the master level, and been judging quite a bit. I don't know, I'm somewhere pretty good north of 100 pointed judge. So, I've judged 3 master nationals and master amateur recently, and I don't know. Hopefully, I've got some things that we can go out that'll at least make you stop and think about things that you consider when setting up and doing some of that. I know Matt's more experienced than I am, so.
Yeah, I'm not. But I've been playing the hunt gas game probably about 30 years also. Got several master hunter Labradors, 2 master hunter Blackcoats, a couple Q dogs. I haven't judged as much as Alan does, but I've probably judged 30 or 40 master tests over time. That's about it. Me and my wife, we raise and breed dogs. She raises Rottweilers, breeds them. I do retrievers, mostly Labradors. Just try to, hopefully we're here to help you. We can give you a different perspective on stuff and maybe why we do stuff. But it make your training more meaningful. Maybe make the test a little bit more meaningful.
First thing before we get out in the field and started, what are concepts that you think are important when running or setting up a mark? What are things that you think should be considered?
Wind.
Wind?
Terrain.
Rain?
Luck, or lack of.
Weather, just weather in general.
Weather?
Wind, if there's like a chop.
Okay, we've got wind, we've got terrain.
You consider cover same as terrain?
I would consider cover a separate thing. To me, those are probably the 3 most important: wind, terrain, and cover when thinking about setting up marks. And or blinds. Those are, certainly the same. So hopefully we're going to move out here in the field in just a minute or 2, and what I think Matt and I have talked about is we'd like for y'all to divide up in teams of maybe 3 or 4, and we get out here, we'll sort of show you what we're looking at, and we're going to get you all in your group to set up some marks. What you think would be a mark that would be a good master, senior, or junior mark, in your opinion, whatever your group is working and setting up. And once you do that, Matt and I are then going to talk about this piece of property and what we looked at yesterday and set up. And then we're going to put the equipment out and we're actually going to run some dogs, and then we'll talk about what the dogs do and what may have influenced the dogs to do what they've done. Does that sound like a good starting place for everyone? Mm-hmm. And hopefully we're going to do this again. We'll repeat this at every setup that we go to, so that maybe after you listen to Matt's wisdom in this first go around, you'll start looking and incorporating some of those type of things in the next setup. And hopefully by the time we get to land tomorrow morning, you won't need us at all. You'll be setting up and understanding why and what we've done. Anything, Matt?
Yeah, you know, kind of like when you look at a piece of ground and you're going to set up a mark for the dogs to run to, you know, you kind of want to think about, you know, why would the dog not want to go there? You know, where do you think the dog would naturally want to go? That's probably not where you want to put the bird. You probably want to put the birds where the dogs have a tendency not to naturally want to go, you know. Okay. Marking is kind of like the dog visually seeing a bird fall, being able to drive through it through some adversity. That's kind of what we want to teach you, and what to kind of look for in dogs marking. Both all the factors you talked about, wind and train and cover and all that stuff, but also how marks influence each other. Yeah, but let's do that. Let's it won't take a super long period of time, but you guys could break up into groups, and we'll show you kind of where we want to run from. Right about here is a good spot for that blind.
Yep.
Okay. So when we walked out here, we kind of picked this spot to run from. This kind of generally speaking, somewhere, you know, in this neighborhood. We were kind of looking at this chunk of water here for like any of the levels of the hunt.
And you probably want to look at putting at least one block in here that you would consider running. So again, just as a group, you know, just discuss this piece of property, find us some marks. Then here in a few minutes, we'll get you to tell us what they are, and we'll break them down as a group. And one rule: there are no bad ideas or thoughts today, except probably mine. And so, you know, don't be bashful. You know, tell us what you really think, and we'll do the same. So go to work here and set us up some marks.
We're going into water.
Yes, this is a water test this morning.
We have to set up a mark for each level.
I would just set up 3 marks, and you can tell us whether it's a junior mark, senior mark, or master triple.
So 3 marks on a blind?
3 marks in a blind, please.
You know, I know that's not the way it typically works at weekend tests, but in theory, you know, any mark would run in a master test, except a really cheaty mark should be able to be run in a junior senior test. Of course, you don't want to run it like a corner cheat in a junior test. Probably not a senior test either, but a good mark should be a good mark.
And this is our line right here.
Anywhere. Going back as well. Or is it coming in this way?
I thought we were throwing it left to right yesterday. But it would really juice it up if you threw it right to left. Yeah.
And this one over here is just clipping.
Yeah, clip in the corner.
Yeah.
Behind line. Yeah.
Totally different with juniors.
So I like that little flat line for this.
I was just saying, I don't like up there, so it's less apt. Go through this cover, up on top of the hill.
Yeah, and that left-hand mark, we had it really hard angled back.
Yeah, just that kind of tree line.
Yeah. Not to the planet, just on top of that.
the hill that kind of turns around. You guys ever do flyers on water? Is that something you
No,
avoid?
the
I
second.
do. I don't like to throw the flyer in the water. Yeah, because you can't.
You can't control it.
Yeah, I think a flyer area needs to be pretty liberal.
Yeah.
I mean, at your typical weekend hunt test, you're gonna shoot the flyer in the first series. It's almost always that way. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, they would sluice birds after our go bird.
Yeah.
You don't see that a whole lot anymore. That was pretty fun. A lot of times they would do that with a flyer, throw a short flyer for a go bird, then sluice it, just kind of checking steadiness up a little bit.
If you want, if you like that idea, you could do one that way. You could do a mark, a blind this way for senior.
That's one thing. You ever see that? Well, they'll knock down a triple, and one of the two birds that's not the go bird will have a blind really close to it.
Yeah.
Directly, either right behind it or right next to it, and they'll tell you gotta pick up that blind before you can pick up that mark.
Yeah.
So you pretty much have to pull your dog off the go bird and slip in there and get that bird.
Yeah.
So you can run the blind.
Okay. Yep.
The first thing we looked at yesterday was which direction we're going to have wind today. And that's why we migrated to this side of the pond. So, first group. Here, we got one right here. There's Thornton. Here's everybody.
Hi, Glenn.
Come on, y'all. So, we're going to put a mark here, shooting left to right.
Junior, senior, master.
Master. We'll have another master mark at that first tree there. Pretty severe angle back towards that yellow sled. And then our third mark, which is our go bird, is just going to dink out here. We just want to use up a little bit of memory. And then our blind is going to be on that second point, through that, over that little first point, and then on that second point, not the third way out. And that's all master stuff. Okay.
All right. Our first mark is going to be from that tree coming this way towards the edge of the water and that cattails, and that'll be our junior mark, and we'll be running from up in the land up here. All right. Senior mark, the same mark there, and then a mark coming out from the big tall maple tree with a big long arc, splashing down just past those little cattails off the point that's kind of in the cove, and you're running from up here more. So, and then our blind will be over there, so blind planter can plant it just on the hill, just kind of skate through here, angle entry. Master marks are the same. Do we have a third master mark? Oh yeah, coming out of that little tree, shooting back towards the other tree. So there's an arc, and then our blind for the masters, you're running masters from up here, is under the arc of that big one on the side of the hill. Okay. Next group.
We were just explaining why.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. All right, you want to talk about junior, or you want me to?
Well, junior, we'd start from closer to the water, and we were thinking they both go the same direction, so we'd have a mark that went about over there, probably landed, I think we'd have one land in the cover, one land on the water. I don't recall what we said there, but so kind of between those two sets of wispy cattails.
So right to left.
Right, a right to left, and then the other one would be farther over here and would land probably in that little divot in the shore area, something like that. So that one maybe would be the one that this one would be laying on the cover, and this one would maybe splash into that divot. area over there. And then for senior, we were talking about one similar mark over here, maybe closer to the edge, shooting this way. Second one, we were going to have those converged.
Yep, but with this, from this maple going up. For
Right, right. So it'd go
left to right.
left to right then, and kind of maybe 10, 15 yards up the shore, something like that. And then the blind would be over at, basically at the point, somewhere in those cattails or that clump of grass on the end there. So that'd be senior, and then for master, we were talking, one mark was going to be a short one, just flop over into there. One was going to be, that was going to be left to right, right? It would land up near the top of the slope to the right of the lone tree over there. The blind would be to the right of the other maple, the skinny maple by itself, and I kind of see where the shade of that tree, of the, somewhere there you see kind of a clump of hay there, that'd be the blind. And the other mark would be a right to left that would land near shore, just kind of beyond the cattails there off the point.
Okay. Questions? Y'all understand?
So I'm gonna let Matt tell y'all what we came up with, but and we'll start describing some of the reasons why we did what we did here in just a second. So Matt, you wanna?
Yeah, we set it up with just more of a look at it for if it'd be a master type test. We put one bird station behind the largest maple tree there, through a really severe angled back on the basically down the tree line on the left side of it. We put another bird station behind the lone tree, throwing right to left, so the bird near the crest of the hill or maybe slightly over it. And we put one bird here in the corner, throwing basically what you'd call a cheater, right to left, landing up there by the road.
Where did that middle one land?
Middle one threw right to left from the lone tree and landed just up over the crest of the hill, probably pretty close to the road.
They're like towards the white.
Yes, sir.
Where's your junior mark? A little more down.
Well, if it was going to be a junior test, we'd have to take this bird out, probably move that middle bird considerably farther in, and maybe throw this bird flat.
Would they be flashing or would they be on the land?
You could throw that bird splashing if you'd like to. Throw it on there. We didn't really consider setting up all three series. That was a good idea you guys came up with for all three versions. That was a good idea you guys came up with this morning. We just kind of looked at it as a master test. And then for a blind, it's pretty much the classic master blind. Get in the water, get on that first point a little bit, and persevere, go deep to the second point to the blind.
Some of the influences that we thought we saw there, with the two marks essentially going out at the same direction, there's going to be a lot of pull back and forth between those marks. Dogs are going to have to really stick with whichever one they start on and to stay with that mark. And so there's a lot of influence there because those birds are thrown the same direction and they're not going to have a whole lot of distance between where they really land. The big thing here is the influence of this mark, the furthest one to the left on the blinds. I mean, you just told the dog it's okay to get up here and run down this shore and go get this blind or mark. Now we're going to come back with this blind and say, no, you need to stay down here in the water and work your way down to get that blind. So there's a lot of influence there to suck those dogs up the hill. Of course, over here you've got this mark on a master dog. I would really want to see him cut this piece of water, but there's going to be a real temptation for these, particularly these high rolling dogs. I can get there quicker by scooting around.
Yeah, we were planning on, correct me if I'm wrong, we were planning on shooting the left bird, this bird, and the middle bird.
That's correct. So the left-hand bird straight back, short bird, make the middle bird the go bird. Question. I see a lot of hum. Question? Left-hand bird, short dainty bird, middle bird, go bird.
So then would you try to push the dog to go to the left one at the second? Or would you go short?
Personally, I would pick up the short bird, get that out of the way, which leaves you running that bird and then coming back and running the bird. Again, as a judge, you'd like to see that. And again, in training, that's what I would try to do, because that's that's the big influence. Want to set this up?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Heel.
Heel. Heel. Heel.
Down.
Now that bird went down that way, right?
Yep.
Over. Oh, that bird. Sit. Where's your mark? There's your mark. Heel. Ellie. Yeah, girl. Heel.
Good, good, good. Good. Mm. Good.
Billbird's a lot of suction on that.
Here.
But the other thing that I saw that you can think about is dogs tend to want to square up the water. This dog, instead of driving that little bit of an angle, got in the water and wanted to square it up. That's an influence that you can think about that will certainly affect the dog on a mark.
Pearl.
Sit. Pearl. Pearl.
Over. Back. Over.
Sit. Sit. Boom. Sit. Angus. Didn't want him to do that.
Good training, man.
Here, heel, heel, heel. Sit, 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 sit. Angus. No! Here! Here! Here. Here. Sit. Here. Sit.
thinking you've got Jack in the holding on.
Yeah, she's pretty wound up right at the moment, so that's why we're not saying too much. She knows we're sit. Dog. Bandit.
Cute. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. There you go. No. Yeah. Sit. Sit down, Peg. Sit. Thank you. She's waiting for a signal from you.
Little cheater.
Oh, that is not like her. You little shit.
Heel.
Sit, bastards.
Heel. Heel. Bandit.
Can't find my camera back.
What? Lost my wind.
Just on this side of the fence.
I see. Over. No. Look. Good. Good. Over.
Oh. Here. 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 Brooke. Come on. Don't forget. Come on. Ooh, that's a pretty one. Here. Oh. Back. Back.
Did he plant the blind?
No.
Plant your blind.
Hold. Hold. Back. 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 Hey, girl.
Heel. Right here. Heel. Heel. Sit down. Sit. Sit down. Sit. 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 RJ.
About your water, big put your kiddo. Thank you. I think that was canine intimidation myself.
The swear words haven't come out yet. Sit down. Sit. Sit. Right here. Heel. Heel. Sit. Sit down. Sit. 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 Yeah, that's what you get. Seriously. What happens when you don't get out of food? Okay.
Oh, Ben. He's looking at it on. No. It's a big boy. Come on. Here. Not tired. Yes. Here. Good. Sit. Very quiet.
Let's go. Come on, let's go, let's go. Come on. Good boy. Thank you guys. We're half the run today.
Here. Here. Walk. Here. Here. Sit. Your mark. This is your mark. Here. 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 Trixie.
got your waders in?
Sit. Good. You got it in you? Good. Back.
Good girl. Over.
Over. No, no. Sit. No, no. Over. Yes. Like the yellow, she picked up the left hand first. Switch. Right hand first line. The yellow and the black. She had to make a couple of different total runs. Yellow, all of that. Sit. 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 Corbin. You don't think so? Seems like it.
Man, it's behind us. No weather winning it from over there.
Overcaught it. Right over the cover. What's interesting is from this viewpoint, that bird is quite high up there.
Got a dead one. Here, heel. Heel. Here. Sit. Sit. Up. No. Sit. Sit. Back. Sit. Sit.
Like Bert.
There you go.
Let's hear it.
We talked about this morning before we went over. Wind, terrain, cover. Which of those three had the influence in this test?
Terrain and wind in their order, and then cover third.
I'm not sure wind had a whole lot to bear on this, and that in a good setup, wind shouldn't. If you set your marks where you really think, you don't want to put them where wind's going to give those marks away. And these dogs had to work to get deep and back of where all the marks were before any of them really were aided by the wind. Cover, there was a little bit there at the water's edge that made the dogs make a little bit of a decision on which gap we're going to choose to go through, and might have influenced the line to a mark, but not a whole lot. I think, and I believe Matt will agree with me, the big factor in this one was terrain.
Yes.
When those dogs squared up, came out on that slope, I think every dog, I can't remember one that did not break down and go left up the middle. And then they were under the influence of two marks there together. So to me, that's, you don't think about it, and I wasn't necessarily considering terrain was going to be a big issue when we set that up. But as it turned out, that was the big thing. So, Matt, you've got good notes.
Well, I don't know about good notes, but I took notes on each bird. And on the go bird, a lot of dogs had trouble getting all the way up to it. And when they did get up the hill, they tended to hunt to the left where that bird was actually throwing, which, if you just looked at that, it's kind of contrary to what you would have thought. You would have thought they'd have ran up the middle, in the wide open space. I think there was a relationship between the go bird and the first bird we threw down. When they got out there, they could get a wind waffling around a little bit. They could win the left-hand bird, but I guess that's a piece of training to keep them to drive to especially being the go bird, keep them drive to that bird. I think one thing that really affected that go bird more than I thought it would when we were just out here setting it up was when the dogs left and got in the water, they lost their picture. They no longer had a clear picture, and they had to maintain that in their head when they got out of the water and started driving up the hill. I think when they did get up the hill, once they got deep in the left-hand gun station, I think the terrain between being grass, road, and corn, and it all generally swooping to the left, probably promoted a lot of dogs to turn left when they got up there and get into a little bit of trouble. I think the bird being slightly over the crest of the hill too, contributed to it. As far as that bird, I think most of the dogs did pretty good on the short cheater bird there, but that bird was fairly close to the bank, fairly close to the shore, and that promoted some dogs to run deep of it. I know a lot of people that play the HRC game, they really like to throw birds like that. They'll actually throw them a lot closer to the water. And that's a hard bird for dogs to get, you know, going across the water. Because the first thing they want to do when they get out of the water is drive. And the bird is right there. They have a tendency to drive faster. On the left-hand bird, the first bird we threw down, I think it was a pretty nice throw, but the dog really only got to see typically half of it, of what they normally would see. They didn't get to see the whole big arc. It just kind of appeared from behind that tree. They got the last half of the arc they got to see really good, so I think they saw it well, but they didn't get as much air time as they typically would. You know, it being tight to the trees. I think as far as terrain goes in that overall test, I think probably one of the biggest factors was the relationship of the two shorelines to the lines the dogs were trying to take to the birds. You know, other than the blind, none of the lines they were trying to take were truly 90 degrees to the shoreline. So it caused the dogs to square to the right in almost all the birds, especially the left-hand bird. And I guess we were going to talk a little bit about where you typically place decoys in your setups. And you know, when you hunt, you typically place decoys within gun range, because that's where you anticipate birds to land. And that's what you guys did here today. You know, the decoys are relatively close to the line. A lot of times you go to a test and they might have put decoys out there where that go bird was, or in between, you know, on the slope of that hill. And that's not typically where you place decoys to hunt. And putting decoys out there will tend to draw dogs out there, you know, aid them if you would, you know. It's just not really a good place to put decoys. If we'd have put a bunch more decoys, like if we'd have threw that go bird in a patch of decoys, the dogs might have had a lot more tendency to go there. As far as the blind goes, I think on that particular blind, a lot of times you set up a blind, say you go out and you train your dog pretty well on running keyhole blinds. You can walk up and that dog will sit down there and he'll really look out there and say, that's a keyhole, I'm going to run it, or something of that nature. That blind was pretty nondescript, and it had suction to the right from all those, what we just did from the marks, and it tended to be hard for the dogs to get a picture of where you wanted to go and take a really nice initial line. Some of the dogs might have been a little bit out of balance as far as taking too much water, and so they got off into the big water initially, you know, people had to handle them back, but that's what I think really affected that blind. And I guess the key part of that blind, or the money cast for that blind, if that would have been a master test, would be to get on that initial point and take that next piece of water a little bit and not be dry. You know, that was probably the hard part about it. You know, a bunch of dogs had difficulty doing that. I guess too, we wanted to talk a little bit about when you set up your training, is do your best to make the gun somewhat concealed. I know you're not going to go out every time and cut brush and all that stuff, but if you can use whatever is out there natural, you know, and so the dogs aren't keying off a big holding blind sitting out there, because long term that'll be to their detriment. You know, they'll have a tendency to run towards those blinds when you want them to run towards the mark. Alan brought up a good point. If you go to a training or a test and you're going to run a cold blind, you know, that's all good, but you got to remember that once you run that cold blind and you run marks after it, that spot where the blind was, that's an old fall now. Where typically, you know, like that way we ran this, that where the blind isn't an old fall. It's really nothing. It's just a nondescript part of the field, and dogs will hunt that scent, and that's okay. Sometimes you have to handle them out, sometimes you don't. But if that would have been a previously picked up blind, you know, whether it was a cold blind or like an interrupted triple and you ran a blind in between them, that spot is an old fall, so you got to make sure your dog doesn't go to it. That's basically what I had about that setup.
Your turn. Questions?
I have a question on,
Yes.
on the go bird.
Yes.
I on the go bird, I saw the crest. Did it fall on this side of the road or was it across the road?
This side.
It was this side.
And a lot of dogs went into the planted field.
Well, I know, and that's why I just knew it was at the crest, but I didn't know where.
Over the crest, behind the crest.
Right.
And the dogs did not really see where it hits the ground.
Sure.
You know, to the dog, it looks like that bird landed on top of the crest, not at the back. So again, if you're throwing birds that land behind a drop off, in that dog's mind, it looks like it's landed up on top, not down behind. Or if you throw one that's up, you've got a swell that comes back up, and they're equal. If you throw one on the second, a lot of times to the dog, again, it's going to look like it's on that first one. If they don't see the swell, and you'll get to where they will break down and hunt short a lot of times.
And that's basically in your training. I mean, that's basically like a re-entry on land. You know, you gotta really promote your dog to drive, and you know, the term people will use is run till you smell mallard. Drive until you find the bird. You know, that's the same principle on on water when you have a re-entry. You know, you want the dog to learn I need to drive until I find the bird. Because they don't have dogs don't have naturally really good depth perception, so they're a victim of those type of throws.
But again, you want to look for those opportunities in training, and really you've got to teach that one, because you know 9 times out of 10 dogs are going to break down on that first knoll, and that's where they're going to establish their initial hunt.
But if you train it, they'll learn to drive it.
So as a handler, and say all of you were in the master test and 20 dogs went, and you got to see how those dogs were working, are there things that you do differently on the line to assure more success than dogs running hither and thither? You guys are the handlers, yeah.
Matt and I had a conversation sitting there enjoying a beer last night about this sort of very same thing. I was telling him a story about I was running one of mine. I needed one last pass, and this was my last opportunity to get a dog qualified for the Master National. And I sat there and watched 20 or 30 dogs struggle with this blind, that they got sucked into an old fall and handlers couldn't get them out. And I was cocky to the point that I said, my dog won't do that to me. So I ran it straight up like everyone else, and guess what? My dog did exactly what everyone else did. So if you sitting there and you see that happening over and over and over again, you start wanting to work through in your mind, is there a slightly different angle or something that you can take? It's easier on a blind than it would be on a mark, because dogs are going to naturally want to run to where that mark is at. So, you know, on that, there's not a whole lot I could see that you could do to help yourself other than, you know, hope your dog will drive through. If there's a blind, then you might try a slightly different line. You've got to, you know, sort of work within the boundaries of what your judges have got. You can't really avoid the test to try to avoid the pitfall, because they probably put the pitfall in there on purpose. I know that didn't answer your question.
No,
but
it kind of did, and then when you say the line, so then that gets to the line manners, and you know, dogs lining up with you at certain points, so if you have a good teamwork going on, then you can change your angles a little better and hope they
and
go
one
right
other
rather
thing
than
is,
left.
you know, I think everyone sort of knows, you know, you want that dog's spine and their nose lined up straight in the direction you want to go. If they're sitting there at an off angle and looking, chances are good they're not going to take that line that you're hoping for.
You know, I guess if I came to this test and I was sitting there midway in the running order, and I was sitting back, I was watching, you know, and typically when you go to a test, they're dogs you kind of know, you've seen dogs before. I was watching, 80% of the dogs struggling on that go bird, and having to handle and everything else. I'd probably just use my get out of jail free card and handle soon on that mark, and try to recover and take the best of it, because once you let a dog get all the sorts on a mark and run around, and he started to cave into that left bird, well, that's a hard handle, and you trashed a lot of the dog's memory. He's not really sure where he's going in. So
Yeah,
even though
in this heat, you've wasted energy, and you're like, well, I don't know if I got enough dog left to do the right thing.
once you let them get in trouble, then you have a tough handle to get them out of trouble, and the dog's all jacked. Your chances of doing the rest of the test aren't as good. And I know it's just something you got to learn. Everybody's got a box. Everybody's done this for a while. Has got a box of whistles at home they didn't blow. They all cost $100 a piece. So it's a hard lesson to learn.
It's only money.
Good questions. Are there others?
So the order the birds were shot off in influenced the dog in that kind of setting. And what would have happened if we shot it off in a different order?
You could shot it around the horn.
Yes.
Well, I think it would have made that middle bird even harder.
Absolutely.
Because it was pretty hard as a go bird. The dogs that were going to cheat that little cheater on the right, they probably still would have cheated it. The dogs that would have done good at it, maybe not so many would have drove up the hill. I definitely think it would have made the two remaining marks tougher.
If you'd shot it around the horn the other way, the short bird first, and made the left-hand bird the go bird, that might have made that bird a little simpler to dig out first. And hopefully then the dogs know I've already picked the bird up down here. I shouldn't be back down there. And might help them a little bit. But yeah. But again, that's still, those are two tough marks. I don't care how you cut those two. They were meaty.
But typically, if we would have shot it, where you'd have picked up the left-hand bird as a go bird, then typically you'd have picked up the short bird. Then you'd have to get the dog to look up the middle and remember that middle bird. Kind of 6 of one, half 7 of the other.
If you were setting that test up as a senior test, which mark would you take out?
I'd probably move the which mark I'd take out. I'd probably take out the cheater. I would throw the middle mark closer in and the other way, and the left-hand bird I would throw it more square. Either give him a little splash at water's edge, or I wouldn't throw it really hard angle back like that.
Okay.
And I wouldn't, in a senior test, even though it would be within the rules because the blind was outside the marks, I personally wouldn't run a blind so tight to the marks. I'd find another blind to run.
Did he use the cheater mark as your blind?
He could. I think I'd be looking for a little more blind than that.
A little bit more, yeah.
Anything else?
What about the order the birds were picked up in? Because if they got the go bird and then you sent them back to the left bird, that blind is, kind of parallel to the line the dogs take to that, versus if you picked up the right-hand bird second and then the left bird as the third, and then you're sending them right back there for the blind. Is that preferable, or?
Yeah, as far as running the blind goes, picking up that left-hand bird before you picked up the little cheater probably would have been better. Most dogs don't like to go back in the same general direction twice. That's why it's not always bad to set up birds that have similar lines but distinct fall areas. That's difficult for a dog. We kind of harp on them not to go back to the same place twice, and then even though that wasn't super tight lines, it was still directional. And most of the time you train to pick up the go bird than the next closest bird.
Short bird.
Get used to that.
That would be the thing there, is I would expect a lot of dogs to come back and want the short bird. And is that a point where you want to get into an argument? I find that's rarely a good place to fuss with your pup. they typically going to win most of those.
Which is why then some of them were looking far out on the blind because they had already been to the land 2 times.
Right.
So now do we go all water? Trying to be good technically.
The marks definitely had an influence on that block. I don't think you could argue that.
Maybe even after, that's one thing when people go out and set up a weekend test, you typically don't run dogs on it. You know, we didn't run dogs on this one either. So, you know, sometimes you're even though you think you know what you're doing, sometimes you're surprised about what the dogs do. You know, maybe those marks had too much influence on that flag.
Okay. Getting close to lunchtime, I would guess.
Is there any time when you would scrap a test? Or have you ever?
You mean after it starts?
Yeah, after you go, oops.
About the only reason I will is if something comes up that's unsafe. A factor there like that. Again, a story I was telling yesterday. I judged the Master National in Horcon 2004, I believe the year was, and we had a pretty meaty test with one mark in particular that was tough, and weather conditions were not favorable, and the first 17 dogs either picked up or they couldn't do the test, and there's a lot of people running around wanting us to scrap the test, but I kept telling my co-judge, we'll be fine, just keep on keeping on, and eventually conditions got better and dogs started doing it, but don't scrap a test just because it's hard, is my take on it. You know, if there was factors there and things that you saw that you wanted to test a dog on, don't suddenly chicken out on it. Now that it pops up, there's a big hole in the middle of your test, it's, dangerous, and yes.
Or the grass is longer than what you think, and as they're going down, they start tumbling. I had that in a test. So two hard chargers started tumbling, so then we had to quickly readjust.
There are things that can be, pop up that you don't see or think, which might cause that. But most of the time, don't bail out on a test just because it's a little tough. That's my take. Unless I'm running, then you.
Well, what happens with that is then your spectators go, I don't want to go do work under those judges again because it was so tough. We get that in agility, so rather than blame us in our training, we're like, don't like those two.
I think you'll find that Matt and I are both on a lot of lists. So
do not enter.
No, I'd say it's yes.
As far as scrapping tests too, let's just say you ran a half dozen dogs, you got 6 dogs, and you decide, well, we don't like this test, we're going to scrap it. To be fair to those 6 dogs, you've got to go to another piece of ground, pretty much. You can't just alter what you got going on out there. So that's you're talking a couple hours to go find another place instead of that.
Time management is the biggest thing, and I know this is not the topic we're here to discuss, but as a judge, if you're going out and judging, you really need to look at time management. To me, is number one thing. You've got to take care of that, or you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Do you guys tend to throw in each series angle in, angle back, flat? Just depending on what the terrain looks like, you might go all angle backs. How do you choose, or do you kind of look for certain areas to be able to throw in flat or back?
Whatever the grounds lend themselves to, I mean, throwing, you don't see it a whole bunch, but throwing birds angled in is a hard bird to get, just depends on what kind of terrain you got, especially, you know, if you've got maybe a little low spot with some more aggressive cover, you know, where you can throw an angle in bird like that. You know, it'll be a bear to get that bird.
And again, angle in and angle back real sharp. It goes back to what Matt said about depth perception. If you throw a bird straight in at a dog, they can't really tell if that bird came straight in or straight back. So, you know, that's a factor that you want to look at. And don't be surprised if your dog, you know, totally missed. Someone suggested a mark over here thrown straight into the water's edge. At that close, it may be okay, but again, remember, depth perception, that those dogs, particularly those younger ones, are going to have trouble distinguishing which direction that bird really went.
We're actually going to throw you one of those water's edge birds in our second deal over here. And they're a hard bird to get.
I don't know if we had a dog that really hammered it yesterday, so.
Although being a birds in that flowers, maybe that'll help.